The dawn breaks over Jerusalem with a silence so complete it feels as though the earth itself is holding its breath. Golden light spills across limestone walls still cool from the night, painting them in shades of amber and rose. The air carries the scent of myrrh and cedar, mingling with the sharp tang of stone dust that hangs perpetually over the city. Below, in the valley where Solomon's laborers gather before the sun reaches its full strength, tools lie arranged in careful rows. Chisels and hammers, ropes and scaffolding, everything prepared for another day of impossible work. The temple of God is rising stone by stone from the bedrock of Mount Moriah, but its construction is moving forward through means that would terrify anyone who discovered the truth. For Solomon, the wisest king who ever lived, has been given power over forces that most men do not even believe exist. He commands demons. Not through his own strength, but through a ring given by God himself, marked with a seal that makes the invisible realm bow to his voice. But here is what most people never fully discover about Solomon's story. His wisdom, legendary though it was, could not save him from the very thing that destroys most men who taste extraordinary power: pride, the slow, quiet drift away from the God who gave him everything. What begins as divine gift ends in spiritual catastrophe, and the temple built by demon hands becomes a monument to both the heights of human wisdom and the depths of human foolishness. Today, you are receiving the full, unfiltered account of Solomon's supernatural reign. Every demon he commanded, every secret he extracted, every moment of triumph and every step toward his ultimate fall. Before we get into it though, if this is your first time on this channel, please consider tapping that like and subscribe button. It truly makes a difference. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you are watching from and what time it is there. We are growing a community that spans the whole globe. So with all of that said, let us get started, shall we? Picture a throne room carved from the finest cedar of Lebanon, its beams stretching overhead like the ribs of some great beast turned to wood. Sunlight filters through high windows, casting angular shadows across polished floors. The air hums with the low murmur of courtiers and advisors, merchants and supplicants, all waiting for the king's attention. Solomon sits elevated above them all, his face still young but his eyes carrying a weight that makes him seem ancient. He is perhaps 30 years old in the full strength of his manhood, his beard trimmed in the fashion of royalty, his robes bearing the purple dye that costs more than most men earn in a lifetime. But it is not his appearance that commands the room. It is the presence of something else entirely: wisdom. It had come to him in a dream years earlier, when he was newly crowned and terrified of the responsibility pressing down upon his shoulders. God himself had appeared to him in the night and offered him anything he desired: riches, long life, victory over his enemies, anything at all. Solomon, in a moment of clarity that would define his entire reign, asked only for wisdom. The request pleased God so deeply that he gave Solomon not only wisdom beyond any man before or after, but also the riches and honor Solomon had not even thought to request. Now kings travel from distant lands just to hear him speak. The Queen of Sheba will one day journey across deserts and mountains simply to test whether the rumors of his intellect are true. Philosophers and sages come seeking answers to questions that have plagued humanity since the beginning of time. But wisdom, for all its glory, carries its own peculiar burden. To see clearly into the hearts of men is to witness their deceptions and their compromises. To understand the structures of creation is to recognize how fragile they truly are. To know the future consequences of present actions is to bear a loneliness that no companion can alleviate. Solomon moves through his court like a man walking through a world made of glass, seeing every crack, every weakness, every point where it might all come crashing down. His judgments are legendary. The case of the two women both claiming the same infant has already passed into folklore. His solution, to threaten to cut the child in half and give each woman her share, revealed the true mother through her willingness to surrender her claim rather than see the child harmed. Wisdom like that cannot be learned from scrolls or teachers. It flows from a source beyond the human. Yet even now, in these early years of glory, something troubles the king's heart. The temple. His father David had dreamed of building a house for the Lord, a dwelling place where God's presence would rest among his people. But David's hands had been stained with too much blood from too many wars. The task fell instead to Solomon, the son of peace, whose reign would be marked not by conquest but by construction. The project is staggering in its scope. Tens of thousands of laborers quarry stone from the hills surrounding Jerusalem. Entire forests in Lebanon are being harvested for timber. Gold and silver flow into the city from trade routes spanning 3 continents. The design itself came through divine instruction, precise measurements and sacred proportions that must be followed exactly. But the work is slow, agonizingly, impossibly slow. The stones are massive, each one requiring dozens of men to move even a small distance. The craftsmen, skilled though they are, can only work as fast as human hands allow. At the current pace, the temple will take decades to complete, and even that estimate assumes nothing goes wrong. Solomon paces the construction site as evening falls, watching the laborers pack up their tools and head toward their camps. The foundation is barely complete after months of backbreaking effort. The walls seem to mock him with their absence, empty space where glory should stand. How can he, the wisest man alive, complete the task God has given him when the limitations of human strength make it nearly impossible? The sun sinks below the western hills, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Solomon stands alone among the foundation stones, his shadow stretching long across the holy ground. Frustration burns in his chest alongside a desperate prayer. There must be a way. God would not assign an impossible task without providing the means to complete it. But what those means might be, even Solomon's legendary wisdom cannot yet perceive. The answer arrives on a night when the moon hangs thin and bright over Jerusalem, casting silver light across the sleeping city. Solomon lies awake in his chambers, his mind turning over the problem of the temple like a man worrying a sore tooth. Sleep will not come. It never does when his thoughts fix on something beyond his ability to solve. The air in the room feels close and heavy despite the coolness of the hour. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifts. A presence fills the chamber, neither threatening nor comfortable, simply overwhelming in its sheer otherness. Light blooms in the darkness, not the warm glow of lamp or fire, but something cleaner, sharper, almost painful to look upon directly. Solomon sits upright, his heart hammering against his ribs. He has experienced visions before, moments when heaven pressed close to earth, but nothing quite like this. A figure stands at the foot of his bed, tall and terrible and beautiful all at once. Wings arch from its shoulders, not the soft feathered wings of birds, but something more like living light given form and structure. The being's face shifts between masculine and feminine, between youth and age, as if it exists partially outside the normal flow of time. When it speaks, the voice carries harmonics that seem to resonate in Solomon's bones. "I am Michael," the angel declares, "Prince of the heavenly host, commander of the armies of the Most High. I come bearing a gift from the Lord your God, who has heard your prayers concerning the temple." The angel extends one hand, and in its palm rests a ring. The band appears to be made of simple brass or bronze, unadorned by jewels or precious metals. But set into it is a seal, a design that hurts to look at directly, geometry that seems to fold in on itself in ways that three-dimensional space should not allow. The seal pulses with its own internal light, green and gold and something beyond color entirely. "This ring bears the seal of God," Michael continues. "Wear it, and you shall have authority over all the demons and unclean spirits that move through the earth. They will obey your voice. They will serve your purposes. Through their labor, the temple shall be completed according to the divine design. Solomon's mind reels at the implications. Demons. The word alone carries terror for most men. The spirits that haunt ruins and possess the vulnerable, that whisper madness into receptive ears and drive good men to terrible deeds. These are what he is being offered control over. The angel reads his hesitation with something that might be compassion. You need not fear them, king. The power is not yours, but God's. The ring is merely the instrument through which that power flows. Use it wisely. Use it only for the temple's construction, and no harm will come to you. Michael places the ring in Solomon's palm. The metal is cool against his skin, lighter than it appears. The seal seems to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if recognizing him, binding itself to him. When he slips it onto his finger, a rush of awareness floods through his consciousness. Suddenly he can feel them. Thousands, tens of thousands of spiritual entities moving through the world like fish through water. Some are far away, dim and barely perceptible. Others are shockingly close, perhaps even within the palace walls. Each one carries its own distinct signature, its own flavor of malevolence or mischief or raw chaotic hunger. The sheer number of them staggers his mind. How has he lived his whole life unaware of this invisible realm pressing so close against the visible world? Call them, Michael instructs. Speak with the authority given to you, and they will come. Begin with the one who has been troubling your master workman's son. His name is Ornias. Before Solomon can ask how he is supposed to do that, the angel vanishes. Not gradually, not with any dramatic exit, simply ceases to be there. The light fades, the presence withdraws, and Solomon is left alone in his chamber holding a ring that hums with terrible power. Dawn is still hours away, but sleep is now completely impossible. He turns the ring on his finger, feeling how the seal catches slightly against his skin. Every instinct tells him this is dangerous, that power over demons is not something any mortal should possess. Yet God himself has provided it. The Creator who gave him wisdom now extends something far stranger and more terrible, authority over the invisible realm. Solomon rises from his bed and moves to the window. Jerusalem stretches below him, peaceful in its slumber. Somewhere out there, a demon called Ornias is tormenting an innocent boy. And for the first time in human history, a man has been given the power to stop it. Not through exorcism or prayer alone, but through direct command. The implications are staggering. If demons can be controlled, what else might be possible? What secrets might they be forced to reveal? What tasks might they be compelled to perform? The temple is only the beginning. Solomon can feel it. This ring opens doors that have been sealed since the fall. Whether that is a blessing or a curse, only time will tell. Morning comes with the usual sounds of the city waking. Roosters crow from courtyards. Merchants begin setting up their stalls in the marketplace. The smell of baking bread drifts on the cool air. But Solomon moves through his morning rituals like a man in a trance, his awareness split between the physical world and that other realm he can now perceive. The ring sits heavy on his finger, warm against his skin, pulsing with potential energy that makes his hand tingle. He summons his chief steward and makes inquiries about the master workman whose son has been afflicted. The man's name is Abiud, a skilled stonemason whose expertise has been invaluable to the temple project. But lately his work has suffered, his attention divided by concern for his boy. The child, barely 12 years old, has been wasting away for months. He eats almost nothing. He sleeps poorly, waking with screams that pierce the night. Dark circles ring his eyes and his skin has taken on an unhealthy pallor. Physicians have been consulted, prayers offered, sacrifices made, all to no effect. The boy continues to decline, and his father's heart breaks a little more each day. Solomon knows now what the physicians could not diagnose. This is no natural illness. A demon has attached itself to the child, draining his life force like a parasite feeding on its host. The entity's name is Ornias, and it moves through the spiritual realm with a hunger that feels almost physical. Even from a distance, Solomon can sense it, a cold spot in the fabric of reality, a darkness that hungers for warmth. The king sends word that he wishes to see the boy. Within the hour, Abiud arrives at the palace with his son. The man's face shows the wear of sleepless nights and helpless worry. The child leans against his father, too weak to stand on his own, his eyes unfocused and distant. When Solomon looks at him with his natural vision, he sees only a sick boy. But when he opens his awareness to the spiritual dimension, he sees something else entirely. The demon crouches on the child's shoulders like some grotesque rider. Its form is difficult to focus on, shifting between states, sometimes almost human, sometimes utterly alien. Long fingers dig into the boy's neck and temples, siphoning energy in slow, pulsing draws. The creature's face, when Solomon can make it out clearly, resembles a mockery of human features stretched over something fundamentally other. Its eyes glow with a dim reddish light, and its mouth hangs open in an expression of perpetual hunger. Ornias. The name rises in Solomon's mind with absolute certainty. This is the demon Michael spoke of, the one chosen to be the first test of the ring's power. The creature seems entirely unaware that Solomon can see it, focused completely on its feeding. It has grown comfortable in its predation, lazy with the ease of tormenting the helpless. Solomon raises his hand, the one bearing the ring, and speaks with a voice that surprises him with its own authority. Ornias. The demon's head snaps up. Its eyes widen in something that looks very much like terror. The spiritual realm itself seems to shudder at the sound of that name spoken with the ring's power behind it. Ornias, Solomon repeats, I command you by the seal of God to release this child and present yourself before me. The effect is instantaneous and dramatic. The demon is ripped away from the boy as if seized by invisible hands. The child gasps, color flooding back into his face, strength returning to his limbs. Abiud catches his son as the boy's knees buckle, staring in amazement at the sudden transformation. But Solomon's attention is fixed entirely on the demon. Ornias hangs suspended in the air before the throne, writhing against bonds that only Solomon can see. The entity that seemed so confident moments ago now appears diminished, almost pitiful in its terror. When it speaks, its voice carries the scraping quality of metal on stone. Please, great king, have mercy. I did not know the boy was under your protection. I meant no offense to Solomon's household. The pleading disgusts Solomon more than the predation did. Here is a creature that torments children but begs for clemency the moment power confronts it. He feels no sympathy, only cold determination to extract everything this demon knows. You will answer my questions truthfully, Solomon commands, and you will serve according to my instructions. Refuse, and the seal will cast you into the abyss. Do you understand? The demon nods frantically, all its earlier arrogance completely evaporated. I understand, great king. I will serve, I will answer. Only please do not send me to the pit. Solomon leans forward on his throne, studying this creature that has caused such suffering. Tell me what you are. Where do you come from? What is your purpose? Ornias shudders, clearly unwilling to speak but unable to resist the compulsion of the ring. I am of the order called Powers, though I fell from that station long ago. I was created to serve, but I chose rebellion. Now I wander the earth, seeking to consume the life force of humans. It is the only thing that eases the hunger, the only thing that makes existence bearable. The confession spills out in a rush, as if the demon has been waiting centuries to tell anyone, what it truly is. Solomon presses further. How many of you are there? How many demons move through the earth? Countless, Ornias whispers. We are as numerous as the stars, great king. Every ruin has its haunters, every wild place its terrors. We fill the spaces between, the thin places where your world and ours press close together. Some are greater, some lesser. Some serve dark principalities, others wander alone. But all of us hunger, all of us seek what we have lost. Solomon sits back, his mind racing with the implications. An entire invisible kingdom exists parallel to the human world, populated by beings of malevolent intent and supernatural power. Yet this ring gives him authority over all of them. The magnitude of what he has been given begins to sink in fully. He could use this power for anything. Protection of his people, certainly, but also for knowledge, for tasks that human hands cannot accomplish, for the temple. You will go to the quarries, Solomon declares. You will use your strength to cut stone and move it where my workmen direct. You will labor until the temple is complete, and you will harm no one in the process. This is my command. Ornias bows its head in submission. It will be as you say, great king. But before Solomon dismisses the demon, one more question demands to be asked. Is there one among you who rules the others, a prince of demons? The creature's eyes widen with fear at the question, but the compulsion of the ring drags the answer from its lips regardless. Yes, we call him Beelzebul, prince of demons, lord of the flies. He commands legions. He sits in authority over all the fallen powers. But even he would bow before that seal, great king. Even he cannot resist the name of God. Solomon absorbs this information with a mixture of fascination and dread. A prince of demons. The thought is terrifying, but also strangely exhilarating. If even the greatest of fallen powers must bow to this ring, then truly nothing in the invisible realm can stand against him. He dismisses Ornias with a gesture, sending the demon to the quarries where it will begin its sentence of labor. The entity vanishes with a sound like wind rushing through a narrow canyon. Abiud kneels before Solomon, tears streaming down his face. My son, he is restored. Great king, you have given me back my child. How can I ever repay such a gift? Solomon waves away the gratitude, though he feels a warmth in his chest at the man's joy. Take your boy home. Let him rest and eat. He will recover fully. As father and son depart, both looking healthier than they have in months, Solomon turns the ring on his finger and contemplates what he has just done. He has commanded a demon, not through hours of ritual or exhausting spiritual warfare, but with simple, direct authority. The power feels clean, almost easy, as natural as giving orders to a human servant. And if one demon can be controlled this simply, why not 10? Why not 100? Why not entire legions working in coordinated effort to build the temple? The wisdom God gave him now combines with this new authority to open possibilities that make his pulse quicken. The temple will rise faster than anyone imagined. It will be built by hands both human and inhuman, the visible and invisible realms working in concert toward a single glorious purpose. But even as excitement builds in his chest, a small voice whispers caution in the back of his mind. Power like this has never been given to a mortal before. There must be a reason for that. There must be dangers he cannot yet perceive. For now, though, those concerns seem distant and abstract. The ring glows softly on his finger, warm and reassuring. God gave him this gift. God trusts him to use it wisely, and Solomon intends to prove himself worthy of that trust. Word spreads quickly through the invisible realm that Solomon possesses the seal. Demons that have wandered freely for millennia suddenly find themselves summoned without warning, ripped from whatever mischief or torment they were engaged in and dragged before the throne of Israel's king. Some come with defiance burning in their eyes. Others arrive already trembling with fear. But all of them, without exception, bow before the ring's authority. Solomon establishes a pattern for these encounters. Each demon is interrogated thoroughly. What is your name? What is your function? What power do you possess? What angel has authority over you? The questions reveal a complex hierarchy within the demonic realm, a dark mirror of the heavenly orders. Some demons specialize in causing specific diseases. Others stir up lust or rage or despair in human hearts. Still others command natural forces, able to summon winds or start fires or poison water sources. Each one, when pressed, reveals the name of the angel assigned to counter its particular brand of evil. Knowledge pours into Solomon's mind like water into a cistern. He orders scribes to record everything, creating detailed records of the invisible kingdom. Names and ranks, powers and limitations, methods of summoning and binding. The archive grows daily, becoming a library of supernatural knowledge unprecedented in human history. The Testament, as it will later be called, captures information that magicians and sorcerers will seek for thousands of years. But for Solomon, it is simply practical research, cataloging the workforce he is assembling. The demons are organized into work gangs according to their abilities. Those with great physical strength are sent to the quarries to cut and transport stone. Others with finer control are assigned to detail work, carving decorations and fitting pieces together with supernatural precision. Some demons can work metal with their bare hands, shaping bronze and gold without need for forge or hammer. These are set to creating the sacred implements the temple requires. The construction pace accelerates dramatically. Stones that required dozens of men to move are now shifted by a single demon working under compulsion. Carving that would have taken skilled craftsmen weeks is completed in days. The human workers watch in amazement as the impossible becomes routine before their eyes. But Solomon is careful to maintain secrecy about his methods. The laborers know only that the king has found new workers of extraordinary strength and skill. They are not told these workers are demons. The supernatural laborers are kept invisible to human eyes most of the time, their presence revealed only by the work they accomplish. To the people of Jerusalem, it simply appears that God is blessing the temple construction with miraculous progress. In a sense, they are not wrong. Among the demons Solomon commands, certain names rise to prominence through their power and their resistance. Beelzebul, the Prince Michael had mentioned, is summoned on a day when storm clouds gather over the city. His arrival shakes the very foundations of the palace. He manifests as a being of terrible majesty, easily 3 times the height of a man, his form crackling with dark energy. Wings like a locust's extend from his back, and his face shifts between human and insectoid features. When he speaks, his voice carries the buzzing of 1,000 flies. "You dare summon me, mortal." Beelzebul's rage fills the throne room like physical pressure. "I am Prince of Demons, Lord of the Air, Commander of Legions. By what authority do you think to bind me?" Solomon raises his hand calmly, letting the ring catch the light. "By the authority of the Most High God, whose seal I bear, you will bow, Beelzebul, or you will be cast into the abyss. The choice is yours." For a long moment, the demon prince holds his ground, defiance burning in eyes that glow like coals. The air crackles with potential violence. Solomon feels sweat bead on his forehead but keeps his voice steady, his hand raised, the seal visible and potent. Then slowly Beelzebul's knees bend. The prince of demons lowers himself before a human king, his face twisted with humiliation and impotent rage. "What do you want of me?" The question comes through clenched teeth. "I want your service," Solomon replies. "You and all the legions under your command. The temple of the Lord will be built and you will aid in its construction. This is not a request." Beelzebul's interrogation reveals the extent of his power. He commands the eastern winds. He can cause storms or dispel them. Disease spreads at his word, particularly afflictions of the lungs and throat. He sows discord among friends and suspicion among allies. His knowledge spans millennia, for he was ancient when the first cities of men were young. "What angel has authority over you?" Solomon asks, following his established pattern. The demon's face contorts with disgust. "Michael, the archangel who cast us down. His name is anathema to me." Solomon notes this carefully. If Beelzebul ever becomes uncontrollable, invoking Michael's name will provide additional leverage. But for now, the seal alone seems sufficient to maintain dominion. Another notable capture is Asmodeus, whose very name causes the human servants within earshot to pale. This demon's reputation precedes him. He is the destroyer of marriages, the sower of lust and jealousy, the strangler of newlyweds. His appearance matches his function, beautiful and terrible at once, with features that shift to match whatever the observer finds most attractive and most disturbing simultaneously. Why do you look at me with such fascination, King? Asmodeus purrs when he is brought before the throne. Does the wisest man alive wonder what it would be like to possess my power over human desire? Solomon keeps his expression neutral, though the demon's presence does stir something uncomfortable in his chest. I wonder only how best to make use of you. What can you build? Asmodeus laughs, a sound like silk tearing. I build nothing, King. I destroy. I tear down what others construct. Marriages, friendships, family bonds, all of it crumbles at my touch. But if you insist on wasting my talents on manual labor, I suppose I can move stones as well as any lesser demon. He is assigned to work the night shifts, kept away from the human laborers as much as possible. Even bound by the ring, his influence over human desire proves difficult to completely suppress. Workers who come near where he labors find themselves troubled by inappropriate thoughts, marriages strained by sudden temptations. Solomon learns quickly that some demons are more dangerous than others even when supposedly controlled. A female demon named Oniskeles presents a different sort of challenge. She appears as a beautiful woman from the waist up, but her lower body is that of a mule, her legs ending in hooves that strike sparks from the stone floor. Her voice is sweet and musical, almost hypnotic in its allure. I strangle men in their sleep, she confesses when questioned, seeming almost proud of her function. I find the ones who sleep alone, who hunger for female companionship, and I visit them in dreams. By morning they are dead, strangled by the desire I provoke. Can you work silver? Solomon asks, unmoved by her appearance or her seductive tone. The question clearly catches her off guard. Silver, I suppose. Yes, I can shape metal. But surely you did not summon me for such mundane. You will fashion the silver implements for the temple, Solomon interrupts. Vessels and bowls, tools and decorations. Your hands will create objects of beauty for the worship of the God whose seal binds you. The irony is not lost on Oniskeles, a demon who kills through perverted desire, now forced to create instruments of holy worship. She bows her head in submission, but her eyes flash with barely suppressed rage. Another demon, Enipsigos, manifests as a constantly shifting form, sometimes male, sometimes female, sometimes neither or both. This entity's voice comes from everywhere and nowhere, echoing strangely in the throne room. I know the future, Enipsigos hisses. I see the threads of fate. Do you wish to know how your story ends, Solomon? Do you want me to tell you what I see waiting for you? I want you to work the bronze, Solomon replies firmly, refusing to take the bait. The great pillars of the temple require skill beyond human capacity. You will provide it. But the demon's words linger in his mind long after it is dismissed. What does the future hold? Will the temple truly be completed without disaster? Will his wisdom and the ring's power be enough to see this through? For now, he pushes such questions aside. There is too much work to do, too many demons to catalog and organize. The testament grows daily, filled with names and descriptions. 36 demons who cause specific illnesses, each one bound and interrogated. 7 female demons who haunt wildernesses and crossroads. Legions of lesser spirits who exist only to create minor mischief and mayhem. All of them now pressed into service for the temple. The human workers begin to whisper among themselves about the king's strange powers. How does he accomplish so much with so few additional laborers? Where do these mysterious workers come from and go to? Why are they never seen clearly? Solomon allows the speculation but provides no answers. Let them think what they will. The truth would only frighten them, and fear makes for poor craftsmanship. Months pass in this manner. The temple rises with supernatural speed, its walls climbing toward the sky, its courtyards taking shape according to the precise measurements God provided. What should have taken decades is accomplished in a fraction of the time. And Solomon, surveying the progress from his vantage point in the palace, allows himself to feel satisfaction. He is doing it. He is building God's house through the wise application of the gifts he has been given: wisdom to organize the work, authority to command unwilling laborers. All of it flowing toward a single glorious purpose. But late at night, when sleep eludes him, he sometimes wonders what will happen when the temple is complete. Will God ask for the ring back? Will the demons be released to return to their former wandering? Or will he be allowed to keep this power, to use it for other purposes, to extend his reign beyond the merely human limitations that have always bounded kings before him? The questions have no answers yet. So he turns the ring on his finger and plans the next day's work, unaware that the very power he wields so confidently is already beginning to work changes in his soul that wisdom alone cannot prevent. The work on the temple proceeds with relentless momentum, but Solomon finds himself increasingly drawn not to the construction itself, but to the knowledge his demonic servants possess. Each interrogation reveals fragments of information about the structure of reality that no human has ever accessed. The demons, bound by the ring's power, cannot lie when directly questioned. They may evade or answer incompletely, but outright falsehood is impossible for them when the seal compels truth. Solomon begins to spend long hours in private chambers set aside specifically for these interrogations. The room is sparse, containing only a chair for the king and a circle inscribed on the floor where the demons are forced to manifest. Torches burn in iron sconces, casting flickering shadows that dance across walls bare of decoration. The air always feels colder in this room, as if the presence of so many spiritual entities has leached the warmth from the very stones. One evening, as purple twilight settles over Jerusalem, Solomon summons a demon whose name the others have mentioned with particular dread. Ephippus appears as a being of living wind, his form constantly shifting, barely holding coherence. His voice sounds like the rushing of air through canyon walls, hollow and echoing. "You have called me from my wandering, King of Israel. What would you know?" "Tell me about the stars," Solomon commands, gesturing toward the window where the first points of light are beginning to pierce the darkening sky. "What are they? Why do they move as they do? What purpose do they serve?" The demon's form ripples with something that might be surprise. "You wish astronomical knowledge. This is not what men usually ask of my kind." "Answer the question," Solomon says quietly, turning the ring so the seal catches the torchlight. Ephippus speaks then of celestial mechanics that make Solomon's mind reel. The stars are not merely lights affixed to a dome above the earth, as common wisdom holds. They are distant fires, each one perhaps a sun like the one that warms the earth, separated by gulfs of space so vast that the human mind cannot properly comprehend the distances. The movements that appear so regular from Earth reflect patterns that govern all of creation, mathematics woven into the fabric of existence by the Creator himself. "The angels who did not fall tend the stars," Ephippus continues, his voice carrying an edge of old bitterness. "They maintain the courses, ensure the patterns hold. It was beautiful work once before we chose rebellion. Now we are barred from those high places, confined to the earth and the air immediately above it. We press our faces against the boundary and remember what we have lost." Solomon listens with intense focus, and scribes record every word. This is knowledge that goes beyond anything the wisest philosophers of Egypt or Babylon possess. The structure of the heavens, explained by one who has seen them from perspectives humans never could. Other demons provide different categories of knowledge. One called Kunapigos, manifesting as a being with the head of a horse and the body of a man, describes the hidden properties of plants and minerals, which herbs heal and which harm. How metals can be combined to create alloys of extraordinary strength. the medicinal uses of substances found deep in the earth, beyond the reach of human miners. There is a stone, Cunepigo says during one interrogation, found only in the mountains far to the east, that glows with its own light when brought into darkness. Men call it worthless rock because they do not know its properties, but ground to powder and mixed with water, it can cure fevers that would otherwise prove fatal. Solomon makes careful note of this. Such knowledge could save lives among his people. The ring has given him access to supernatural labor, yes, but it has also opened a library of information that could benefit humanity in countless ways. Another demon, Rabdos, appears as a living shadow that causes the torches to dim when it manifests. Its specialty is dreams and the interpretation thereof. We move through human sleep, it explains in a voice like rustling leaves. We see the fears buried deep, the desires hidden even from the dreamer's own awareness. We can plant visions, manipulate the sleeping mind, or simply observe what bubbles up from the unconscious depths. Can you tell the future through dreams? Solomon asks. The question has troubled him, since Enopsigos suggested knowledge of his fate. No, Rabdos admits. We can extrapolate based on patterns we observe. We see a man's character and predict where it will lead him. We recognize the seeds of future actions in present choices, but the future itself remains hidden even from us. Only the Most High sees what has not yet occurred, and he shares such knowledge sparingly. This answer should comfort Solomon, but instead it troubles him. If demons cannot see the future with certainty, then neither can he, despite all his accumulated wisdom and supernatural aid. The path ahead remains shrouded, and power is no guarantee against catastrophe. Yet he continues the interrogations, driven by an insatiable hunger to know. A demon called Beelzebul claims to have been present at the parting of the Red Sea during the Exodus. I was there, it says, its form flickering like a candle flame. I saw Moses raise his staff. I felt the word of power that split the waters. We tried to resist, all the powers of Egypt working in concert to prevent it, but we might as well have tried to hold back the dawn. When the Almighty speaks, creation obeys. Tell me exactly what happened. Solomon leans forward, fascinated despite himself. The demon's account matches the stories passed down through generations, but with details no human witness could have perceived. The terror of the Egyptian gods, minor spiritual entities that were revealed as powerless before the God of Israel. The way the water stood like walls of glass, held in place by angelic force. The moment when those walls collapsed upon Pharaoh's army, and demons fled screaming from the judgment that consumed their human pawns. We learned that day, Beelzebul concludes, that the God of Israel is not like the gods of the nations. He is not a powerful spirit to be bargained with or manipulated. He is something else entirely, something that makes even the mightiest of us seem like insects before flame. The testimony sends chills down Solomon's spine. This God, the one who gave him the ring, commands such absolute power that even the princes of demons speak of him with trembling. And yet that same God has chosen to work through Solomon, a human king, to accomplish his purposes. The interrogations continue night after night. Solomon learns the names of angels he has never heard taught in any synagogue. Michael and Gabriel are familiar, but what of Raphael, Uriel, Sariel, Raguel? Each angel has specific authority over certain domains, certain types of demons, certain aspects of creation. The organizational structure of both heaven and hell becomes clearer with each testimony forced from unwilling lips. One demon called Ornias, the very first Solomon commanded, returns for additional questioning. You have grown bold, king, it observes. When first you summoned me, I felt fear in you, tightly controlled but present nonetheless. Now you call us forth with the casual authority of one who has forgotten what we truly are. Should I fear you? Solomon asks. The seal gives me absolute authority over your kind. The seal, yes, Ornias agrees. But you are still flesh. still mortal, still vulnerable in ways that power cannot fully protect. We are patient, King. We measure time differently than you do, and we remember everything. The words carry an edge of threat that makes Solomon's hand instinctively move to the ring. Are you suggesting you would harm me if you could? I am suggesting, Ornias says carefully, that the ring binds our actions but not our will. We serve because we must, not because we choose to. And when the binding ends, as all things in this world eventually end, we will remember who forced us into servitude. Solomon dismisses the demon with a wave, but the conversation lingers in his thoughts. The ring gives him power, yes, but it also creates enemies of beings who are essentially immortal. When his reign ends, when he dies as all humans must, what then? Will the demons seek revenge against his descendants? He pushes the concern aside. That is a problem for another day, perhaps for another generation. For now, the knowledge continues to flow, and Solomon drinks it in like a man dying of thirst who has found a bottomless well. His scribes work constantly, recording everything. The testament grows thick with revelations. Future generations will wonder at the detailed information it contains about the invisible realm. Some will believe it fully. Others will dismiss it as fantasy or the ravings of a mind touched by madness. But Solomon knows every word is true, extracted under compulsion from beings who cannot lie when the seal commands honesty. The moon rises full and bright over Jerusalem, casting silver light through the window of the interrogation chamber. Solomon sits alone after dismissing the latest demon, surrounded by scrolls covered in careful script. So much knowledge, so much power. He has become the repository of secrets that reshape understanding of reality itself. And yet, a small voice in the back of his mind asks a question he does not want to acknowledge. Is this what God intended when he gave the ring? Or has Solomon allowed his hunger for knowledge to carry him beyond the boundaries of wisdom? The question hangs unanswered in the cool night air, while outside his window, the temple rises stone by stone toward completion. The construction of the temple accelerates beyond anything the human workers can fully comprehend. Foundation stones that should have required months to quarry and position are set in place within weeks. Walls climb skyward with impossible speed, each course of masonry fitted so precisely that no mortar is needed between the massive blocks. The craftsmanship is flawless, angering human artisans who take pride in their skills but cannot hope to match the perfection demons achieve under compulsion. Solomon walks the construction site at dawn, when golden light first touches the eastern walls. The building is beginning to take recognizable shape now. The Holy of Holies, the inner sanctuary where God's presence will dwell, is already framed in cedar brought from Lebanon. The great pillars that will stand at the entrance are being cast in bronze, each one a masterwork of metallurgy that would be impossible without supernatural assistance. A human foreman named Joab approaches the king with obvious nervousness. "My lord, the workers are troubled." "Troubled how?" Solomon asks, though he can guess the nature of the complaint. "The new laborers, the ones who work the night shifts and are never clearly seen. The men say they hear voices speaking in languages that make their ears hurt. They find tool marks in stone that could not have been made by human hands. Some claim to have seen shadows moving of their own accord, doing work without any visible body attached to them." Solomon keeps his expression calm. "And what do the men conclude from these observations?" Joab shifts his weight uncomfortably. "Some say you have made pacts with spirits, my lord. Others claim you have hired sorcerers from distant lands who command strange forces. There is talk of witchcraft, of powers that violate the law of Moses. The accusation could be dangerous if it spreads beyond the work site." Solomon chooses his words carefully. "Tell the men that I use only what God has provided. The ring I wear was given by an angel of the Lord himself. Every worker, whether visible or invisible, labors under divine authority. There is no witchcraft here, only the wisdom and power that the Almighty has granted me for this sacred task." The foreman seems somewhat reassured, though doubt still clouds his eyes. "As you say, my lord, I will tell them." After Joab departs, Solomon continues his inspection, but the conversation troubles him. How much can he reveal without causing panic? The truth would certainly frighten the workers, possibly even cause them to abandon the project. Yet maintaining secrecy requires constant vigilance and increasingly elaborate explanations for phenomena that defy natural law. In the quarry, Ornias and a dozen other demons work under the supervision of human overseers who do not realize what they are directing. The demons are kept invisible, their presence indicated only by the work they accomplish. Massive stones are cut from the living rock with precision that should be impossible, then transported to the construction site by strength that exceeds anything human muscle could produce. One of the human supervisors, a grizzled veteran of many building projects, pulls Solomon aside. "My lord, I have worked stone for 40 years. I know what human hands can and cannot accomplish. What I am seeing here, it is not natural." "Does the work proceed well?" Solomon asks. "Better than well, my lord. We are ahead of schedule by months, possibly years, but the men are uneasy. When something seems too good to be true, wise men look for the hidden cost." Solomon places a hand on the man's shoulder. "The cost is paid by me alone, through the wisdom God has given me to organize this work. Trust that I would not jeopardize the temple or the workers for any temporal gain. This is the house of the Lord we are building. Everything must be done according to His will." The supervisor nods slowly, still uncertain but willing to accept the king's word. These conversations become routine as the work progresses. Solomon finds himself constantly managing human anxiety while directing demonic labor, walking a tightrope between revelation and concealment. The great bronze pillars are completed on a day when storm clouds gather ominously overhead. Each pillar stands over 27 feet tall, crowned with elaborate capitals decorated with pomegranates and lilies. The craftsmanship is breathtaking, every detail rendered with perfection that seems to glow with its own internal light. Asmodeus, the demon of lust and destruction, was assigned to oversee this work. The irony of having such a being create objects of beauty for God's house is not lost on Solomon. When the pillars are finally positioned at the temple entrance, Solomon summons the demon for a private conversation. "You have done well," the king acknowledges. "The work exceeds even my expectations." Asmodeus's beautiful, terrible face twists into an expression of bitter amusement. "Did you think I would sabotage the task, king? The seal prevents such disobedience. I can no more mar this work than I can fly to the stars. But do not mistake compliance for contentment. Every moment I spend building this house is agony, creating beauty for the worship of the one who cast me down." "Why did you rebel?" Solomon asks suddenly. The question has haunted him throughout these months of commanding fallen spirits. Why choose exile and torment over serving in heaven? The demon's eyes flash with ancient pain. "Because service in heaven required submission to creatures made of dirt and water. When the Almighty created humanity and commanded us to serve you, to protect and guide these fragile mortal things, many of us refused. We who were made of fire and light, who sang at creation's dawn, we would not bow to clay given breath." "And was it worth it?" Solomon presses. "This wandering, this hunger, this exile from the presence of God, was your pride worth the cost?" Asmodeus is silent for a long moment. When he finally speaks, his voice carries a weight of sorrow that surprises Solomon. "Ask me again in 1,000 years, king. Ask me when your bones have turned to dust and your great temple is rubble. Ask me when empires you cannot imagine have risen and fallen. Perhaps then I will have an answer." The demon is dismissed, but the conversation stays with Solomon long afterward. These beings he commands are not merely monsters or mindless forces of destruction. They are fallen angels, creatures who made choices and now live with eternal consequences. Their suffering is real, even if self-inflicted. The knowledge does not make him pity them exactly, but it does add complexity to his understanding of the invisible realm. The Holy of Holies nears completion under the direction of human craftsmen working with supernatural assistance. This innermost chamber will house the Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred object in all of Israel. Its walls are overlaid with pure gold, hammered thin and fitted with precision. Cherubim are carved into the walls and doors, their wings spread as if in perpetual worship. No demon is allowed to work directly on this space. Their very presence would be a desecration. But they prepare materials, shape metals, and transport supplies, always stopping at the threshold they cannot cross. Beelzebul, the prince of demons, is summoned one final time before the temple's completion. Solomon needs to confirm that the work meets every divine specification, and who better to ask than one who once stood in heaven's courts? "Examine what we have built," Solomon commands. "Tell me if it is worthy." The demon prince walks slowly through the completed sections, his terrible gaze taking in every detail. His expression is difficult to read, shifting between emotions too complex for human language to capture. When he finally speaks, his voice is quiet, almost reverent. "It is beautiful," Beelzebul admits. "I hate that it is beautiful. I hate that you have forced me to contribute to something that will house the presence of the one who judged us, but I cannot deny what my eyes see. This is worthy. This is a dwelling place fit for the Most High." "Will he accept it?" Solomon asks, voicing the fear that has grown stronger as completion approaches. Will God truly dwell in a house built by human hands aided by demonic labor? Beelzebul turns to face him, and for a moment the demon's expression holds something almost like compassion. "The Almighty does not need houses, King. He is not confined by walls or limited by space, but he honors the hearts of those who seek to honor him. If your heart is pure in this, if your intention is truly to create a place for his people to encounter his presence, then yes, he will accept it." The words offer reassurance, but they also carry an implied warning. If your heart is pure. Solomon examines his own motivations and finds them muddled. Yes, he desires to honor God, but he also takes pride in the achievement. He enjoys the power the ring has given him. He delights in the knowledge he has extracted from demons. The work is nearly complete, but what has it cost him spiritually? That question remains unanswered as the final stones are set in place. The day arrives when Solomon can stand back and survey the completed temple in its full glory. It rises from Mount Moriah like a mountain itself, white stone and gleaming gold, cedar and bronze, all fitted together in proportions that seem to embody divine mathematics. Courtyards surround the main structure, providing space for worshippers and sacrifice. Every detail matches the specifications God gave, executed with precision that human hands alone could never have achieved. The workers gather to marvel at what they have built. They see only the visible structure, unaware of the invisible hands that shaped so much of it. Their pride is justified and innocent. They have labored faithfully, and the result exceeds anything in human experience. But Solomon knows the full truth. He knows which stones were cut by demons, which metals shaped by fallen powers, which decorations crafted by beings who hate the very God the temple will honor. The knowledge sits heavy on his heart, even as he accepts the congratulations and praise of his people. That night, alone in his chambers, Solomon removes the ring for the first time in months. The metal has left a mark on his finger, a pale band where the sun has not touched skin. He examines the seal in lamplight, watching how it seems to pulse with internal luminescence. This small object has given him power beyond any mortal king in history. But what will he do with it now that the temple is complete? God gave it for a specific purpose. That purpose is now fulfilled. Should he return it? Wait for it to be taken back? Or has it become his to keep, to use as he sees fit? The questions have no immediate answers. So Solomon slips the ring back on, feeling its familiar weight settle against his skin. Tomorrow the temple will be dedicated. Sacrifices will be offered. Priests will begin their sacred service. And Solomon will watch it all, knowing that he has accomplished something extraordinary through a combination of divine gift and dangerous authority. Whether that knowledge will become his crown or his downfall, only time will reveal. The morning of the temple's dedication breaks with a clarity that feels almost supernatural. The sky stretches cloudless and blue above Jerusalem, the air crisp and clean with the scent of cedar and incense. People have been gathering since before dawn, streaming into the city from every corner of Israel and beyond. Farmers and merchants, nobles and servants, young and old, all come to witness the moment when God's house is finally opened for worship. Solomon stands in his chambers as attendants help him dress in robes of state. The fabric is royal purple, embroidered with gold thread in patterns that catch the morning light. The crown of Israel rests heavy on his head, but it is the ring that draws his attention. He has not removed it since last night's moment of doubt. Now it sits on his finger as it has for months, the seal glowing faintly even in the daylight. Should he wear it to the dedication? Or would that be a presumption, carrying into God's presence the very instrument through which he commanded demons? After a long moment of internal debate, he decides to keep it on. The ring was given by an angel at God's direction. It represents divine trust and authority. To remove it would suggest shame over what he has accomplished, and Solomon feels no shame. Perhaps pride, yes, but not shame. The temple is magnificent, built through wisdom and power both, and today all Israel will see what their king has achieved in God's name. The procession begins at the palace and winds through the city streets toward the Temple Mount. Solomon walks at its center, surrounded by priests in their sacred garments and Levites carrying musical instruments. The Ark of the Covenant has been brought up from its temporary dwelling, borne on poles by priests who move with careful reverence. The crowd lining the streets erupts in cheers as the procession passes. Children are lifted onto shoulders to catch a glimpse of the king. Women throw flowers in his path. Men call out blessings and prayers. The celebration is spontaneous and genuine, a nation rejoicing in what has been built for their God. But as Solomon walks, he becomes aware of another audience observing the proceedings. His spiritual sight, enhanced by months of commanding demons, now operates almost constantly. He can see the invisible realm overlaying the physical world like two images not quite aligned, and what he sees troubles him. Demons line the route, kept at a distance by some invisible barrier but clearly present. Their faces show a mixture of emotions: rage at being excluded from this celebration, jealousy of the joy they can never experience, and something else, something that might almost be longing. Do they remember what it was like to worship without the bitterness of rebellion poisoning every gesture? Beelzebul stands atop a nearby building, his massive form visible only to Solomon's enhanced perception. The prince of demons watches the ark pass with an expression of such profound sadness that Solomon feels an unexpected pang of sympathy. This being once stood in heaven's courts. He sang praises in the direct presence of God. Now he is exiled, watching from the outside as creation celebrates the very God he rejected. The tragedy of it strikes Solomon with fresh force. These are not mere monsters. They are fallen glories, ruins of what was once beautiful. The thought distracts him until he reaches the temple entrance. Then all awareness of the invisible audience fades as he confronts the reality of what has been built. The structure rises before him in all its glory: white stone gleaming in the sun, gold decorations flashing like captured fire. The great bronze pillars flank the entrance, their capitals wreathed in carved pomegranates and lilies. Every detail speaks of care and precision and devotion. This is what months of labor, human and demonic, have produced, a dwelling place for the Almighty. The ark is carried into the Holy of Holies and positioned beneath the outstretched wings of the golden cherubim. The priests withdraw, and Solomon steps forward to address the assembled thousands. His voice carries across the courtyard, strong and clear, filled with conviction. The Lord has said that he would dwell in thick darkness. I have indeed built you an exalted house, a place for you to dwell forever. The words are ritual, prescribed by tradition, but Solomon speaks them with genuine feeling. Whatever complexity motivated the temple's construction, his desire to honor God remains real. Then comes the moment of consecration. Solomon raises his hands toward heaven and begins the prayer of dedication. Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below, keeping covenant and showing mercy to your servants who walk before you with all their heart. The prayer flows from his lips, a mixture of praise and petition, thanksgiving and supplication. He acknowledges God's faithfulness to Israel, recalls the promises made to his father David, and asks that this temple might truly become a place where heaven and earth meet. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Solomon asks, his voice dropping to something more intimate, almost questioning. Behold, heaven and the highest heaven cannot contain you. How much less this house that I have built? The words are theologically correct, but they also reveal Solomon's own uncertainty. Can the infinite truly be housed in the finite? Can God's presence genuinely rest in a building made by human and demonic hands? As if in answer, something begins to happen. A cloud forms within the temple, though the sky outside remains perfectly clear. It starts as a faint mist in the Holy of Holies, then grows thicker, denser, more substantial. The priests who had been preparing sacrifices stop their work and stare in amazement. The cloud spreads, filling the inner sanctuary, then flowing out into the larger temple complex. It is not natural fog or smoke from incense. This is something else entirely, heavy with presence, thick with glory. Solomon feels it before he sees it fully. The weight of divine presence pressing down, not threatening but overwhelming in its sheer intensity. The cloud grows so dense that the priests cannot continue their service. They back away, some falling to their knees, others standing transfixed with awe and terror mingled on their faces. The glory of the Lord fills the temple, just as it once filled the tabernacle in the wilderness. God has accepted the offering. He has chosen to dwell in this place. The crowd erupts in worship. People fall on their faces, crying out in praise and thanksgiving. Musicians play with tears streaming down their faces. The sound of celebration fills the air like thunder, rolling across Jerusalem and out into the surrounding hills. God has come down. The temple is accepted. The work is vindicated. Solomon stands at the center of it all, his arms still raised, feeling the presence wash over him in waves. Joy floods his heart, but so does something else: relief. He had built the temple through questionable means, using power that troubles him even as he wields it. But God has accepted it anyway. The divine presence does not shrink from resting in a place built partially by demon hands. Perhaps the purity of the purpose outweighs the complications of the method. For 7 days the celebration continues. Thousands of animals are sacrificed, the smoke of their burning rising continually toward heaven. The priests work in rotating shifts, unable to keep up with the sheer volume of offerings the people bring. Everyone wants to participate in honoring God on this historic occasion. The feast tables groan under the weight of food. Wine flows freely. Music and dancing fill the streets day and night. Jerusalem has never seen celebration on this scale. But on the 8th day, as the crowds begin to disperse and life slowly returns to normal rhythms, Solomon retires to his chambers and finally allows himself to feel the exhaustion that has been building for months. The temple is complete. God has accepted it. His great work is finished. He should feel nothing but satisfaction and peace. Instead, he feels strangely empty, as if the completion of his life's purpose has left him without direction. He removes the ring and sets it on a table, staring at it in the lamplight. What does he do with this power now? The temple required demonic labor, but that need has passed. Should he release the demons he has commanded? send them back to whatever wandering they came from. The thought troubles him more than it should. He has grown accustomed to the power, to the authority, to the knowledge that nothing in the invisible realm can resist his will. Giving that up feels like voluntarily becoming less than he is. A knock at the door interrupts his thoughts. One of his advisors enters with reports of the day's business. Life continues, mundane and necessary, even after miracles. Solomon forces himself to engage with the details: trade agreements and legal disputes, tax collection and military readiness. The work of kingship never ends, even when temples are completed and God's presence rests in glory among his people. But that night, alone again, Solomon picks up the ring and slips it back onto his finger. The metal is warm against his skin, familiar and comfortable. He tells himself he is keeping it for emergencies, in case demons threaten his people and need to be commanded. But deeper down, he knows the truth. He does not want to give up the power. He has tasted authority over the invisible realm, and the taste has become sweet. The decision is subtle, barely conscious, but it marks a turning point. God gave the ring for a specific purpose. That purpose is now fulfilled, but Solomon chooses to keep the gift beyond its intended use. And in that choice, seeds are planted that will grow into something darker than he can yet imagine. Months pass after the temple's dedication. The initial euphoria fades into routine as priests establish their schedules and worshippers grow accustomed to the magnificent structure that now dominates Jerusalem's skyline. Solomon returns to the work of governing his kingdom, settling disputes, and managing the complex web of alliances that keep Israel secure among hostile neighbors. The ring remains on his finger, a constant presence he barely notices anymore, like a piece of jewelry worn so long it becomes part of the skin. But the demons have not forgotten. Though dismissed from their forced labor on the temple, they remain aware of the king who commanded them. Some return to their previous haunts, tormenting humans in small, petty ways. Others linger near Jerusalem, watching and waiting for an opportunity that has not yet revealed itself. And a few, the more powerful ones, begin to whisper suggestions that Solomon's enhanced spiritual perception allows him to hear. It starts with Asmodeus, the demon of lust and desire. Solomon has taken wives, as kings do, to seal political alliances and demonstrate his wealth and power. The marriages are strategic, not romantic, arrangements that benefit the kingdom more than the king personally. But Asmodeus begins to plant thoughts, subtle and insidious, about the women Solomon has not married. Beautiful women from foreign lands, daughters of rulers who might be offended if the great King Solomon did not honor them with marriage proposals. The Queen of Sheba speaks highly of you, the demon whispers during a moment when Solomon sits in his chambers late at night. She is beautiful, they say, wise in her own right. Would she not make a fitting bride for the wisest king? The thought takes root. Solomon justifies it as diplomatic necessity. A marriage alliance with Sheba would open trade routes and secure Israel's southern border. The fact that the woman is reportedly stunning has nothing to do with his interest, or so he tells himself. More wives arrive over the following months: Moabites and Ammonites, Edomites and Sidonians, women from nations that worship gods foreign to Israel. Each marriage makes political sense. Each one strengthens an alliance or prevents a conflict. But each one also brings into Solomon's household practices and beliefs that contradict the law of Moses. The women bring their household gods with them, small idols that they worship in private. Solomon allows it, telling himself that he is being tolerant, that forcing them to abandon their traditions would create unnecessary conflict. Beelzebul watches these developments with satisfaction. The mighty Solomon grows in wives as he once grew in wisdom. The demon prince observes from his invisible vantage point. Soon his household will contain more religions than Jerusalem has streets, and a divided heart cannot long maintain its devotion to the Most High. But Solomon does not perceive the danger. His wisdom, legendary though it is, seems not to extend to recognizing the slow erosion of his own spiritual foundation. He still worships the Lord. He still offers sacrifices and maintains the temple service. Surely a few foreign wives with their harmless household customs cannot threaten his relationship with God. Besides, he is Solomon, the wisest man alive. Surely he is immune to the temptations that destroy lesser men. The ring, meanwhile, continues to grant him power over the demonic realm, but he uses it differently now. Where once he commanded demons purely for the temple's construction, now he calls them for other purposes. Information gathering, for instance. Demons can move unseen through enemy territory, listening to private conversations and observing military preparations. Solomon uses this supernatural espionage to stay ahead of potential threats, knowing what rival kings plan before they act. "Tell me what the pharaoh plots," he commands a demon named Astaroth one evening. The entity appears as a being riding a serpent, its form flickering between male and female. "The pharaoh plots nothing against you, great king," Astaroth replies. "He fears your wisdom and your God, but his generals speak of expanding into territories that border your lands. They believe you are too focused on building projects to resist a gradual encroachment." Solomon uses this information to send diplomatic warnings that convince Egypt to redirect its expansion elsewhere. The crisis is averted without a single soldier being deployed. The king congratulates himself on his cunning use of the tools available to him, but he does not recognize that each use of the ring for purposes beyond its original intent normalizes the practice. What was once reserved for the sacred task of temple building becomes routine statecraft. Other demons offer other services. One claims to know the locations of hidden treasures buried by ancient kings. Solomon sends expeditions that return with gold and silver, enriching the royal treasury. Another promises to reveal the secret weaknesses of his political opponents, information Solomon uses to outmaneuver them in negotiations. The ring becomes not just a source of power, but a shortcut around the difficult work of genuine wisdom and discernment. His wives multiply. The number grows from dozens to hundreds. Each one requires her own quarters, her own servants, her own allowance for maintaining the lifestyle appropriate to a queen. The expense is staggering, but Solomon's wealth seems inexhaustible. Trade flourishes. Building projects continue. The kingdom prospers materially even as something more important begins to wither. The foreign wives grow bolder in their religious practices. What began as private worship in personal chambers expands to small shrines built in courtyards. Solomon permits this, reasoning that happy wives make for domestic peace and stable alliances. He does not participate in their worship, he tells himself. He merely allows them freedom to follow their own traditions. What harm can come from tolerance? One evening, one of his Moabite wives approaches him with a request. "My lord, my people worship Chemosh, the god of Moab. It would honor both me and my homeland if you would build a high place for his worship, just a small shrine on the hill east of Jerusalem. You need not worship there yourself, but your permission and patronage would demonstrate your respect for my people's traditions." Solomon considers the request. Politically, it makes sense. The king of Moab would be pleased, strengthening an important alliance. The cost is minimal, just a small building project, and he would not be personally involved in any false worship. What difference does it make if his wife wants a place to practice her religion? "Very well," he agrees. "I will commission the shrine." The decision passes almost without notice in his own mind. But in the invisible realm, demons observe with growing excitement. The wise king who once commanded them with absolute authority, who forced them to build the temple of the true God, has just agreed to build a shrine for a false deity. The irony is delicious. The opportunity is enormous. Chemosh's shrine is completed within weeks. It is modest compared to the temple, but it represents something significant. For the first time, Solomon has used his authority and resources to support the worship of a god other than the Lord. The line has been crossed, and crossing back becomes increasingly difficult with each step forward. Other wives make similar requests: a shrine for Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, another for Milcom, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Solomon approves them all, each time reasoning that he is merely being diplomatic, tolerant, and politically astute. He does not worship at these shrines himself. He remains faithful to the Lord, or so he believes. But his prayers begin to change. Where once they were intimate conversations with the God who gave him everything, they become formal and ritualistic. He goes through the motions of worship without the heart that once animated them. The temple still receives its sacrifices, but Solomon himself attends less frequently. He is busy, he tells himself. The kingdom requires his attention. God understands. The demons certainly understand. They watch as Solomon's spiritual vitality slowly drains away, replaced by religious formalism and political calculation. The man who once interrogated them with fierce determination to extract knowledge now seems barely aware of the invisible realm, except when he wants to use it for some personal advantage. Beelzebul gathers a council of the more powerful demons who once labored on the temple. The king is vulnerable, the prince observes. His wisdom remains, but his devotion wanes. The ring still gives him authority over us, but his spiritual discernment dulls. We cannot directly harm him while he wears the seal, but we can encourage the trajectory he has already chosen. Whisper to his wives. Suggest that their gods deserve more honor. Press him gradually toward greater compromises. The campaign is subtle but effective. Solomon's foreign wives become more insistent in their requests. Could the shrines be enlarged? Could public festivals be celebrated in honor of their gods? Could priests from their homelands be brought to Jerusalem to lead worship? Each request seems reasonable in isolation. Each one moves Solomon further from the exclusive devotion to God that once characterized his reign. His advisors grow concerned and voice their warnings. My lord, the people murmur that you honor false gods. The prophets speak against the shrines you have permitted. This path leads away from the Lord who gave you wisdom and wealth. Solomon dismisses their concerns with irritation. I have built the temple. I maintain its service. My private tolerance of my wives' religious practices is no one's concern but my own. I am not worshiping false gods. I am merely being a good husband and a wise king. But the protest sounds hollow even to his own ears. Late at night, when sleep will not come, Solomon sometimes looks at the ring on his finger and wonders what has happened to him. He remembers the young king who asked God only for wisdom, who desired nothing but to serve well and rule justly. Where has that man gone? When did wisdom become cunning? When did devotion become mere ritual? When did the extraordinary power he wielded become ordinary and expected? The questions trouble him, but not enough to change course. He is too far down the path now to turn back without admitting error, and Solomon's pride, always his greatest weakness, will not allow such admission. He is the wisest man alive. Surely he knows what he is doing. Surely his choices are justified by circumstances others cannot fully understand. The rationalization continues even as the foundation crumbles beneath his feet. The years accumulate like dust settling over something once bright and polished. Solomon's reign, which began with such promise and divine favor, gradually transforms into something neither his father David nor his subjects would recognize. The king's wealth grows beyond measure. Gold flows into Jerusalem from Ophir and Tarshish. The royal stables house thousands of horses. His merchant fleet brings exotic goods from lands so distant their names sound like legends. By every material standard, Solomon's kingdom represents the pinnacle of human achievement. But spiritually, the king withers like a plant cut off from water. The ring remains on his finger, its power undiminished, Yet Solomon uses it now primarily for personal gain rather than divine purpose. He commands demons to reveal the locations of treasure. He forces them to manipulate weather patterns to ensure good harvests. He even uses them to influence the dreams of foreign rulers, planting fears that make them more compliant in negotiations. The power that was meant to build God's house has become a tool for building Solomon's empire. His wives number 700 now, with 300 additional concubines. The royal harem is a city within the city, a complex network of apartments and courtyards housing women from every nation that touches Israel's borders. Each woman brings her own gods, her own priests, her own festivals and rituals. What was once a monotheistic kingdom slowly becomes a religious marketplace where every deity can find a shrine and every practice a home. Solomon himself begins to participate in the foreign worship, not fully or officially, but in small ways that accumulate into apostasy. He attends a festival for Ashtoreth because one of his favorite wives requests his presence. He offers incense at a shrine to Chemosh to honor a visiting Moabite delegation. He permits, then encourages, then actively supports the worship of gods whose very names the law of Moses forbids speaking. Each act of participation seems minor in isolation, but together they form a pattern of betrayal that grows impossible to deny. The prophets come to warn him. They arrive at the palace with messages from the Lord, their words burning with divine fire and human urgency. Thus says the Lord, "You have forsaken the covenant I made with your father David. You have turned your heart after other gods. Your wisdom, which was my gift, you have used for your own glory rather than mine. The kingdom will be torn from your house because of your unfaithfulness." Solomon receives these warnings with barely concealed contempt. Who are these wild-eyed men to question his choices? He is Solomon, the builder of the temple, the wisest king in history. God spoke to him directly in dreams. An angel delivered the ring to his hand. Surely these prophets misunderstand the divine will. Surely God is pleased with the prosperity and peace that characterize Solomon's reign, regardless of minor religious complexities. "Tell the prophets I have heard their message," Solomon instructs his servants, "but remind them that I built the temple they worship in. I established the priestly orders and the sacrificial system. My devotion to the Lord is beyond question." Yet even as he speaks these words, he knows they are hollow. His devotion is not beyond question. It has been questioned, found wanting, and judged. He simply refuses to accept the verdict. The ring begins to feel different on his finger. Where once it pulsed with clean divine authority, now it seems to carry a darker weight. The demons he commands show less fear and more contempt in their responses. They obey still, compelled by the seal's power, but their manner suggests they know something Solomon does not want to acknowledge. The man who commands them is no longer the faithful servant of the Most High. He has become something else, something more like them than he would care to admit. Beelzebul appears without being summoned one night, materializing in Solomon's private chambers with an arrogance that would have been unthinkable in earlier years. "Great king," the demon prince says, his voice dripping with mock reverence, "I have come to congratulate you on your achievements. You have done what we could never accomplish through direct assault. You have built shrines to false gods in the very shadow of the Lord's temple. You have led Israel into idolatry through the simple expedient of indulging your own desires. We are grateful." Solomon's anger flares. "How dare you appear before me unbidden? I command you by the seal to depart." But though Beelzebul leaves, his laughter echoes in the chamber long after his form has vanished. The mockery stings because it carries truth. Solomon has become an instrument of the very forces he once commanded. The power he wielded so confidently has somehow reversed its flow, and he did not notice until the trap had already closed. Sleep becomes increasingly difficult. When Solomon does manage to drift off, his dreams are troubled by visions that leave him gasping awake in darkness. He sees the temple he built crumbling into ruins. He sees Jerusalem burning while demons dance in the flames. He sees his own sons fighting over a divided kingdom, their hands red with each other's blood. The visions are terrifying, but are they prophetic warnings or merely the products of a guilty conscience? Solomon cannot tell anymore. His relationship with God, once so vibrant and real, has degraded into something transactional and distant. He still offers sacrifices, but they feel mechanical, religious obligations performed without passion or genuine devotion. He still visits the temple, but the presence that once filled it seems absent now. Or perhaps it is Solomon himself who has become absent, going through physical motions while his heart wanders elsewhere. One of his oldest advisors, a man who served David before Solomon was born, requests a private audience. His aged face shows both love and grief as he speaks. "My lord, I'm an old man who will soon go to his fathers. Before I die, I must speak truth to you, even if it costs me your favor. You are destroying everything your father built. David was a man of war and bloodshed, yes, but his heart remained devoted to the Lord. You have been a man of peace and wisdom, yet your heart has turned to stone. The kingdom prospers, but the king perishes. Please, before it is too late, turn back to the God who gave you everything." The words pierce through Solomon's defenses like arrows finding gaps in armor. For a moment, he feels the full weight of what he has become. Tears spring to his eyes as recognition floods through him. He has betrayed the trust of God, the love of his father, and the welfare of his people, all in pursuit of wisdom divorced from devotion and power disconnected from purpose. "You speak truth," Solomon whispers. "I know you speak truth, but how does one return from where I have gone? How do I undo years of compromise and corruption? The shrines I built cannot be unbuilt. The wives I married cannot be sent away without destroying alliances and causing political chaos. The patterns I have established cannot be easily broken." The old advisor's eyes fill with compassion. "With God, all things are possible, my lord. Repentance begins with acknowledgement, and you have just taken that step. What comes next requires only the courage to act on what you know to be true." But courage is precisely what Solomon lacks. He thanks the advisor and dismisses him, promising to consider his words carefully. Yet when the old man leaves, Solomon does nothing. The moment of clarity passes and the fog of rationalization returns. Change would be difficult. Change would require admitting error publicly. Change would mean giving up the power and pleasures he has grown accustomed to. And Solomon, for all his wisdom, cannot bring himself to make that sacrifice. The ring grows heavier on his finger. He tries to remove it one night, thinking that perhaps surrendering the power would be a first step toward restoration. But when he attempts to slide it off, pain shoots through his hand like fire in his veins. The ring has bonded to him somehow, or perhaps he has bonded to it. The seal that once represented divine authority now feels more like a shackle he cannot remove. Demons gather in increasing numbers around Jerusalem, drawn by the spiritual decay emanating from the king's palace. They cannot harm Solomon directly while he wears the ring, but they can influence everything around him. They whisper to his wives, stoking their demands for greater honor to their gods. They plant thoughts in the minds of his counselors, encouraging advice that leads him further astray. They even infiltrate the dreams of his subjects, creating an atmosphere of spiritual confusion that spreads through the kingdom like disease. The temple still stands in physical glory, its gold still gleaming, its sacrifices still offered daily. But the spiritual reality it was meant to embody has been compromised by the very king who built it. The structure remains, but the substance has leaked away, drained by 1,000 small compromises that have accumulated into catastrophic betrayal. Solomon writes during this period, pouring his inner turmoil into poetry and philosophy. The words that flow from his pen are darker now, tinged with cynicism and existential despair. Meaningless, meaningless, he writes. Everything is meaningless. What does man gain from all his labor at which he toils under the sun? The wisdom that once brought him joy now reveals only the emptiness of human achievement apart from God. He writes of love and its fleeting nature, of wealth and its inability to satisfy, of power and its ultimate futility. His observations are accurate, his insights profound, but they are the insights of a man who has tasted everything and found it all lacking because he has lost the one thing that gives meaning to everything else. His relationship with the living God has deteriorated to the point where even his wisdom becomes a burden rather than a blessing. The prophets continue their warnings, growing more urgent as the years pass. The Lord says he will tear the kingdom from your house. Because of your unfaithfulness, Israel will be divided. Your son will rule over only a remnant of what you governed. This is the decree of the Almighty, and it cannot be revoked. Solomon hears these prophecies with a mixture of fear and fatalism. He believes them but feels powerless to prevent them. The trajectory has been set. The consequences are in motion. And he, the wisest man who ever lived, cannot find a way to escape the fate his own choices have created. Late one night in the deepest darkness before dawn, Solomon sits alone in his chamber surrounded by scrolls filled with his own writings. The ring glows faintly on his finger, pulsing with a light that seems to mock rather than comfort. He has commanded demons, built temples, accumulated wealth beyond imagination, married hundreds of women, and achieved fame that will echo through history. Yet he feels utterly empty, completely alone, and profoundly lost. God, he whispers into the darkness, if you can still hear me, if you still care about a fool who squandered your gifts, I am sorry. I have taken everything you gave me and twisted it into something you never intended. I used power for pride, wisdom for selfish gain, and wealth for self-indulgence. I built your house with demon hands while building my own house on sand. I know what I should do, but I lack the strength to do it. The confession hangs in the air, unanswered by any voice from heaven. God's silence feels more terrible than any judgment he might pronounce. Solomon sits in that silence for hours, waiting for something, anything, that might indicate divine response. But the dawn comes with only the usual sounds of the city waking. His servants arrive to dress him for another day of ruling a prosperous kingdom with a dying soul. The ring remains on his finger. The demons continue their invisible work. The shrines to false gods stand on the hills surrounding Jerusalem. And Solomon, the wisest fool in history, continues his reign with the knowledge that he has achieved everything and lost everything in the very same breath. The years of Solomon's decline are not recorded with the same care as his glorious early reign. The scribes who chronicle Israel's history seem almost reluctant to document how far the great king fell, how completely the wisest man alive was undone by his own wisdom divorced from wisdom's source. The biblical account mentions his foreign wives and their corruption of his heart, but the full extent of his supernatural dealings remains hidden in texts that would not be widely known for centuries. The Testament of Solomon itself becomes one of history's strange artifacts. The document contains detailed accounts of demons interrogated and commanded, angels invoked for protection, supernatural knowledge extracted through the ring's power. Future generations will argue about its authenticity. Some will treasure it as genuine revelation, a window into the invisible realm that normally remains hidden from human eyes. Others will dismiss it as legend or allegory, too fantastic to be literally true. But those who study it carefully will find within its pages something more troubling than mere fantasy. The Testament reads like the journal of a man who possessed extraordinary power and gradually lost his moral compass in the exercise of it. The early sections overflow with wonder at divine provision and careful stewardship of supernatural authority. The later sections show increasing casualness about commanding demons, less concern for God's glory and more focus on personal gain. The ring itself disappears from history after Solomon's death. No biblical account mentions what became of it. Did God reclaim it through angelic intervention? Was it buried with Solomon, sealed away in his tomb? Or did it pass to another, perhaps spawning legends of magical rings that will echo through cultures across the world? The Testament offers no clear answer, leaving the ring's fate as mysterious as its original bestowal. Solomon dies an old man, wealthy beyond measure but spiritually bankrupt. His son Rehoboam inherits the throne but not his father's wisdom. The kingdom splits exactly as the prophets foretold, torn apart by tribal rivalries and resentments that Solomon's policies had suppressed but never resolved. 10 tribes break away to form the northern kingdom of Israel, leaving only Judah and Benjamin loyal to David's house. The division fulfills divine judgment pronounced years earlier, consequences set in motion by Solomon's gradual apostasy. The temple remains standing, a monument to both God's faithfulness and Solomon's complexity. For centuries, it will serve as the center of worship for the Jewish people, its stones bearing silent witness to the supernatural circumstances of its construction. Priests will offer sacrifices without knowing that demons once labored on the very altars they serve. Worshippers will pray in courtyards shaped by fallen angels forced into unwilling service. The demons themselves scatter after Solomon's death, released from the compulsion that bound them. Some return to their former haunts, tormenting humans in familiar ways. Others carry knowledge of their servitude with them, teaching lesser spirits about the power that resides in God's name and the danger of seals that bear divine authority. The invisible realm remembers Solomon with a mixture of hatred and respect. He was the only human to ever command them so completely, and they do not forget. Beelzebul returns to his throne as prince of demons, but the experience has changed even him. He has stood in the shadow of God's temple. He has witnessed divine presence accepting a dwelling place built partially by demon hands. The cognitive dissonance troubles him in ways he cannot fully articulate. How can the God who cast them down accept worship in a house they helped build? What does that say about divine mercy, about the possibility of redemption, about the complexity of judgment? The questions go unanswered. Demons do not repent. The choice made in primordial rebellion remains fixed, but the memory of building God's house lingers, a strange footnote in the long history of the war between heaven and hell. In later centuries, magicians and sorcerers will seek the Testament, hoping to learn Solomon's techniques for commanding demons. Some will find partial copies, fragments of the original manuscript that has been translated and retranslated across languages and cultures. They will attempt to recreate Solomon's feats, invoking angel names and drawing protective circles, speaking words of power in languages they barely understand. Most will fail, sometimes spectacularly and fatally. The power Solomon wielded was not his own but God's, channeled through the ring given by Michael. Without that divine authority, humans attempting to command demons find themselves overmatched and outmaneuvered by beings far older and more cunning than any mortal. The Testament becomes a cautionary tale as much as an instruction manual, its pages warning of dangers that exceed any potential benefits. Yet the text preserves something valuable beyond its catalog of demons and angels. It preserves the story of what happens when wisdom becomes untethered from devotion, when power is pursued for its own sake rather than for divine purpose. Solomon's tragedy plays out in the Testament's pages as clearly as in any biblical account. A man blessed beyond all others, given gifts that should have secured his legacy for eternity, who nonetheless squanders everything through pride and the gradual corruption that power breeds in hearts that forget their source. The Testament also raises questions that theologians will debate for millennia. Can God use unholy means to accomplish holy purposes? Is it acceptable to command demons if the goal is building a temple? Where is the line between wise stewardship of supernatural power and dangerous presumption? Solomon crossed lines that perhaps should not have been crossed, even with divine permission. Or perhaps the permission itself was a test he failed by not recognizing when to stop, when to return the gift, when to say that wisdom has limits and power should be surrendered before it corrupts. The temple Solomon built stands for roughly 4 centuries before Babylonian armies destroy it, burning its cedar beams and carrying away its gold. The second temple, built after the exile, never quite matches the glory of Solomon's construction. No demons are commanded for its building. No supernatural labor accelerates its completion. It is built through purely human effort, and perhaps that makes it more genuinely holy, unsullied by the moral complications that shadowed its predecessor. But even in ruins, Solomon's temple remains a symbol. It represents human achievement reaching toward divine glory. It embodies the possibility of earth and heaven meeting in a specific place, and it testifies to the tragedy of potential unfulfilled, of a king who had everything necessary to become the greatest servant of God, but who instead became a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power. The Testament of Solomon survives in various manuscripts, some dating back to the early centuries after Christ. Scholars debate its origins, its reliability, its purpose. Was it written by Solomon himself, a first-hand account of supernatural encounters, or was it composed much later by someone using Solomon's name to lend authority to their own mystical speculations? The questions may never be definitively answered. What remains clear is that the Testament captures something true about human nature and divine gifts. Power, even power given by God, can destroy those who wield it if they forget that the power is not their own. Wisdom, even supernatural wisdom, becomes foolishness when separated from love and humility. And the greatest achievements can turn to ashes when the heart that drove them becomes corrupted by pride. Solomon built the temple. That fact remains undisputed. He commanded demons. The Testament testifies to this, and the speed of the temple's construction suggests methods beyond purely human capability. He fell from grace. The biblical account makes this clear. What the Testament adds is the connection between these facts, the way power and pride intertwine to bring down the wisest man who ever lived. The ring's seal, bearing the name of God, represented authority that should have been used with reverent fear and careful limitation. Instead, it became a tool for personal ambition, a shortcut around the difficult work of trusting God's timing and methods. In that transformation, Solomon lost not just his spiritual vitality but his very wisdom. For wisdom divorced from the fear of the Lord is not wisdom at all, but merely cleverness that leads to destruction. Centuries after Solomon's death, a teacher sits under the shade of an olive tree near Jerusalem, surrounded by students eager to learn. The conversation turns, as it often does, to the great king who built the temple and possessed wisdom beyond any other human. The students know the stories of Solomon's glory, his wealth, his building projects, his legendary discernment. They speak of him with reverence, wishing they could have lived in such a golden age. The teacher listens quietly, then raises a hand to pause their enthusiasm. You speak of Solomon's glory, and rightly so, but do you know how his story ends? The students shift uncomfortably. They have heard whispers of a fall, of foreign wives and idolatry, but the details remain vague and troubling. Solomon, the teacher says slowly, was given gifts beyond any king before or since. Wisdom that made rulers from distant lands travel for months just to hear him speak. Wealth that turned Jerusalem into the richest city on earth. Peace that allowed him to build without the distraction of war. And more than this, power over the invisible realm that let him command demons as a shepherd commands sheep. The students' eyes widen. This last detail is new to most of them, though rumors of such things circulate in certain texts. He used this power to build the temple, the teacher continues, And in this he accomplished something magnificent. The house of the Lord rose faster than should have been possible, built with a perfection that human hands alone could not achieve. God accepted it. Divine presence filled it. By any measure, Solomon succeeded in the task assigned to him. But, and here the teacher's voice drops lower, compelling the students to lean in closer. Success in a task is not the same as faithfulness in a life. Solomon began well, but he did not finish well. The power he was given for a specific purpose, he kept for general use. The wisdom meant to serve God, he employed for personal gain. The ring that should have been returned, he wore until it wore him. One student dares to ask, what became of him? The teacher gazes toward Jerusalem, where the temple still stands, though it is now the second temple, the first having been destroyed long ago. He died wealthy and famous, but spiritually empty. He wrote in his later years that everything is meaningless, that all human achievement amounts to nothing. These are not the words of a man at peace with himself or with God. The kingdom he built was torn apart immediately after his death. The unity his father David established crumbled because Solomon's heart had crumbled first. He built God's house with demon hands while allowing his own house to be built on sand. And the wisdom that should have protected him became the very thing that deceived him, because he trusted in the gift more than in the giver. The students sit in silence, processing this darker version of a story they thought they knew. Finally, one asks, then was it wrong for God to give him the ring? Should Solomon never have commanded demons? The teacher considers this carefully. The ring was given for a purpose, and that purpose was fulfilled. The temple stands, does it not? But like all great gifts, it carried great responsibility. Solomon was meant to use extraordinary power with extraordinary care, to wield authority over the invisible realm while remaining submitted to divine authority himself. He could command demons, but he was supposed to remain commanded by God. Where he failed was not in the using but in the keeping. When the temple was complete, the ring's purpose was fulfilled. He should have returned it, or at least stopped using it for other ends. But power, once tasted, is difficult to surrender. And wisdom, for all its glory, cannot protect a heart that has begun to love the gifts more than the God who gives them. Another student speaks up. So what should we learn from Solomon's story? The teacher smiles sadly. Learn that the greatest danger is not the absence of gifts but their presence. Learn that wisdom without devotion becomes folly. Learn that power, even power given by God, can destroy you if you forget its source. Learn that building temples matters less than becoming living temples, that the works you accomplish mean nothing if you lose your own soul in the accomplishing. But also learn this, and here the teacher's voice grows stronger, more hopeful. Learn that God can use flawed people to accomplish perfect purposes. Solomon's moral failure did not negate the temple's holiness. The demon's unwilling labor did not corrupt the worship that would happen within those walls for centuries. God is able to work through broken instruments, though he would prefer instruments that remain whole. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The teacher stands, preparing to dismiss the students, but one last question comes. Do you think Solomon repented before he died? Did he find peace with God in the end? The teacher is quiet for a long moment. The testament of Solomon ends without clear resolution. The biblical account says little of his final days. We can hope for mercy as we hope for it ourselves. God is more ready to forgive than we are to ask. But whether Solomon did ask, whether he found in his final moments the humility that eluded him for years, this we cannot know. We can only learn from his mistakes and pray we do not repeat them. The students disperse as darkness falls, each one carrying the story in their heart, weighing what it means for their own lives. The teacher remains, looking toward Jerusalem where lights are beginning to flicker in windows. Somewhere in that city, the testament of Solomon lies preserved in scrolls, its pages holding secrets and warnings for those wise enough to read them properly. The ring, wherever it went, is gone from history, but its legacy remains in the story of a king who commanded demons yet could not command himself, who built God's house yet lost his own soul, who possessed all wisdom except the wisdom to know when enough is enough. Solomon's name will be remembered for millennia, spoken with reverence and caution in equal measure. The wisest man who ever lived, the builder of the temple, the commander of demons, the fool who had everything and lost what mattered most. Somewhere in the invisible realm, demons still speak of him, the human who made them bow, the king who extracted their secrets and forced them into service. They remember with hatred, yes, but also with a strange respect. For Solomon alone among all humans wielded the authority they could not resist. He alone made them build for the glory of the God they had rejected. In their own twisted way, they honor his memory even as they celebrate his fall. And in heaven, where the full story is known with perfect clarity, perhaps there is grief for what Solomon could have been and gratitude for what he accomplished despite his failures. A temple was built, a people were blessed, knowledge was preserved, and a warning was written in the life of one man that would echo through every generation. Power without devotion leads to destruction. Wisdom without love becomes foolishness. And the greatest gifts can become the heaviest burdens when we forget they were meant to point beyond themselves to the one who gives all good things. The testament of Solomon closes not with triumph, but with tragedy. Not with the glory of demons commanded, but with the sorrow of a soul that commanded demons yet lost command of itself. Not with the celebration of the temple rising, but with the recognition that temples of stone mean nothing if the temple of the heart crumbles into ruin. This is the complete story, the unfiltered account, every triumph and every failure, every moment of glory and every step toward catastrophe. Solomon commanded demons and built God's house, but he could not command his own heart or build his life on the foundation that would last. Let those who have ears to hear, hear. Let those who have eyes to see, see. For in Solomon's story lies wisdom for every generation, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and without that fear, even the wisest become fools. The stars shine over Jerusalem tonight, the same stars that once reminded Abraham of God's promises. They shine on a temple built by demon hands and human hearts. They shine on the legacy of a king who had everything and lost what mattered most. They shine, as they always have, bearing witness to the truth that some things never change. God remains faithful even when his servants fail. Power corrupts even the wisest. And the greatest tragedy is not the absence of gifts, but their misuse by those who forget that every good and perfect gift comes from above, from the Father of lights, who changes not.